So, for my 31-year-old mind of the research and studies I've done, the last legitimate war we were in was World War II, for reasons of entering, not for our own personal benefit, but for the worldwide safety, et cetera, et cetera. Talk about our engagement in wars since World War II, how those started, what have kind of come from those wars, and what have we learned, or what lessons haven't we applied?
Well, if you look at World War II, I do believe it was a just war as well, because we had to stop Hitler and stop the slaughter of innocent people and the imperialism that Germany was about to undertake worldwide. But after World War II, there was a chance we could have actually made the world much better and safer for everyone if we had taken a much more moderate, measured approach to the system of the Soviet Union, which was also concerned about its own security. The Soviets had lost a lot of lives in defending, right, against Germany and Hitler. British, yeah. Oh, huge, and the British. And if the U.S. had come out of World War II understanding that the Soviets were concerned about their security as well. They'd been invaded 3 times in the last 150 years, from Napoleon, Kaiser, and then Hitler. So the Soviets wanted to have some kind of a buffer zone to keep another invasion from occurring. They went ahead and engineered certain kinds of coups and elections to get friendly regimes on their eastern border, on the western border. I'm not justifying that type of Soviet dominance, but I'm saying we have to understand how we can, once we understand a country's situation, we can work to reduce the tensions and to ameliorate the problem. Our elites that led this country since World War I don't care about the other countryside or about our potential enemies. They, in fact, ratchet up the tension by saying, those guys are out to get us. We got to get them first before they get us. And it keeps escalating. I'm not saying we're the only ones to blame. I'm just saying sometimes there's a misunderstanding. Other times it's just basically aggressive action on the part of imperialist leaders here who are concerned mainly about American markets. Why do we have 1,000 military bases around the world? You tell me. 1,000 U.S. military bases around the world in active bases. In how many countries? Out of 200 countries, we're in 150 countries. Can you believe that? And you know what it costs the American taxpayer to maintain those bases, just to maintain those bases? $250 billion a year, $250 billion.
I remember being, I think I was 16 during September 11th, and then a couple years later when Bush came out to go invade Iraq, and I had enough, I think, academic and insight and understanding of world issues to know that this guy was pulling one over us.
Yes.
How did that happen and continue to happen and continues to happen, knowing that there's more problems now than actually when we went in?
Part of it is the responsibility of the corporate-owned media, the mass media, which acts more like a lapdog rather than a watchdog. For example, when President Bush went on television in February, and he gave the State of the Union address saying, we have to go into Iraq. There are weapons of mass destruction there. Iraq is buying yellow cake uranium from Niger. They're trying to build weapons of mass destruction. And Iraq and Saddam Hussein are involved with bin Laden and terrorism. Complete fabrications and lies. Bush put those out there. He said he was misled. It was all proven false. And yet, 75% of the American public believed it because the media, the corporate media that reported on Bush's speech, did not challenge him directly. NBC did ask me to come on their news, okay, in February when Bush was making that speech. The day after he made it, they had me on NBC. It's on my website. You can go and see the interview.
Whenever action is necessary, I will defend the freedom and security of the American people.
What do you think Americans thought of that statement? And also, what do you think the Allies thought of that statement?
I think it's a very critical statement because he's suggesting that he will go forward regardless of what the United Nations will do, without any sanctions from the UN supporting the U.S. He'll still go into Iraq and change the regime if need be. And the Allies are very concerned about that statement. Many Democrats have challenged it and said he should really try to work through the UN and let UN inspections continue.
And I said to the President, Mr. President, let the inspections work. They are working. The UN inspections are working. They're finding no weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein is changing his attitude. He's letting us into all kinds of places they never let us into before to inspect. Our own American inspector on the UN team says, don't start the war, let us have more time for inspections. And we knew that the document about Niger was a phony document, manufactured by the Italian intelligence and given the British intelligence. And it was proven that the grammar written in the French language was bad grammar. The wrong leaders signed the document, and Bush used that and said, look, Saddam's trying to buy yellow cake uranium. Weapons of mass destruction, those were dismantled 9 years before. Right. So I think it's the media's fault, Adam.
Who sold him the original weapons?
United States.
And who knew about him using chemical weapons against the innocent Iraqis.
Ronald Reagan, our president, when Congress decided to punish Iraq with an embargo for doing that, Ronald Reagan said, "What are you doing, Congress? Those guys are our allies. Saddam Hussein's our allies. He's stopping Iran from taking over that part of the world. We should take away that. Don't even think of putting an embargo on him." That's the kind of hypocrisy that occurs quite often. And the American people are totally out of the loop because they're too busy, but not informed by things. The Defense Department is the only department in the U.S. government that is not subject to audit. Can you believe that? They're not audited. Congress has ordered them to be ready for audit several times. They've never been ready for it. Instead, I quoted Linda Woodford, a woman who works for the Defense DFAS, the Defense Finance Agency, that writes the paychecks for soldiers, that keeps track of the money as to how much is being spent on the M1, the Abrams tanks versus the other planes. What happens? She says, we are told by our superiors, when the budget doesn't match, when the numbers don't add up from what we get from the Congress and what we spend in the Pentagon, when it doesn't add up, we have to use plugs. They plug in false, phony numbers to make the numbers match. I'm telling you, this has been documented. And we're spending just hundreds of millions in the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, which can't fly or turn or climb, as a Rand Corporation instead. Sure. This plane is a boondoggle, and we'll still keep buying it, right? Obama and the Congress has voted for $1 billion this year to buy several more F-35s that don't even work, that many generals don't even want.
Right.
Because why? The military-industrial complex lobbyists for Lockheed Martin are giving money to members of Congress. And there is an F-35 caucus in Congress, made up of 35 members of Congress, whose sole purpose is to get money for that airplane. That's the corruption, my friend. That's what Bernie Sanders is talking about, how to change this dollar democracy and make it a true democracy.
So the last documentary I just finished was about the fact that there's 22 veterans who commit suicide every day in America, almost one every hour.
Also, it's a terrible thing.
It seems that we've become, if you're anti-war, you're anti-American, and the fact that we have no problem sending these young men and women who are doing more tours than any time in history, the longest wars in American history, and not doing anything for them when they come back. How come no one's outraged about that besides the people on the front lines? But we have no problem sending them through the cycle again.
I'm definitely outraged about it. Part of the reason that many people are not is many people with a volunteer army don't have any skin in the game. They are not their sons and daughters. The army it touches very few people's lives because they're not related to the other people. It's not a draft army, right?
We've become anti-intellectual, anti-education, and anti-fact. So for someone who's been in the field and doing that, I mean, it really doesn't matter. You can show them point blank. These are the numbers, this is the truth, this is the reality. They're still so emotionally driven, it doesn't sway their view either way. They're steadfast in that view. How do we change that?
Here's how we do it in my humble estimation and study. And what you said is absolutely true. Many people on the right, they say, don't confuse us with the facts. We know what's right. We know what's real. And they just go forward. They plow forward. Here's how we change it. We bring in the people who are in the middle, who haven't decided, who are not educated on this issue at all, which is the vast majority of Americans. And we give them the facts and the numbers. And you bring in Sean Aiken to speak on television or on your show. Interview him and show how he suffered as a soldier when he didn't have to because of the lobbyists. You do that and you win the public opinion in the center and those who have not been educated on it. And then you add that to our coalition that says what the extreme right is doing right now is absolutely wrong. Is there a pun there? What the right is doing is wrong. What the extreme right is doing is wrong. And that has to be changed. It's extremely wrong. Thank you. You made it better. Right.
Who's funding our wars? Because we're in debt. How are we able to play with all these things Bernie wants to pay for? From my information is China's funding our wars, or where are we getting this money that's coming out of thin air to invade new countries and buy new equipment when we're so in debt?
Yeah, you mentioned several unjust wars, unnecessary wars, starting with the Vietnam War and now the war in Iraq, and a question about whether that was completely justified. It was not justified at all. And they're getting it, and President Bush got the money for the war in Iraq by borrowing money. He borrowed it from wealthy people around the world and from wealthy governments such as China's. He just jacked up the U.S. debt by several $1 trillion to pay for that war, which was just outrageous. And the American people should know that he put us in greater debt to fight that war that was not even needed, that has destabilized the Middle East, that's causing greater amounts of acts of terrorism and more resentment against us. It's time to shift that whole paradigm and bring in someone like Bernie Sanders, who's one who believes in a measured response, a careful response, making war the last response, not the first one, and basing it on facts.